a lot of life is things that happen to us. And a lot of what kind of joy and happiness and connection and peace that we find is how we choose to deal with those things. Hey there, welcome to Unboxing It, a podcast by Lara Wellman and me, Rowan Knox. Each week we tackle societal ideas and expectations that can stop us from leading full and authentic lives. We're so glad you're joining us. Let's get started. Thanks for joining us on this week's episode of Unboxing It. I'm Rowan.
And I'm Lara.
And today we're talking about a topic that it's a thing that I say all the time and I have to check myself, but fairness. And you know, when something happens and you go, that's not fair. That's
Mm-hmm.
not fair, right?
Yeah, it's not fair. It's a big feeling that can be really crushing or just like veer you off when you feel it.
It's that sense of injustice for me. And I think in part, like I want to talk about why we chose this topic. We chose it because there's this idea when we're growing up, I think, that life should be fair, that
Mhm.
everything should be balanced, and I want to preface this by saying I'm a human rights advocate. So I am all about equity. I want to see people have the same opportunities as other people, no matter who they are, where they come from. And I will continue to always fight for that. But in my own life, I can feel a sense of injustice like it is nobody's business. I do not like injustice. When I feel that something isn't fair, I haven't been given a fair shake, I've been dealt a worse hand than somebody else, I can stew in that for days sometimes. I don't know about you, Lara.
Yeah, I think it's really easy to get into this really angry place where it's not fair. How come I have to deal with this and you don't have to deal with this? Why am I dealt this hand? And it's difficult to get through it when you feel like that. That's one of those things that brings up resentment. Is something that I think just poisons everything. Whenever you're in a moment of resentment, I think something needs to be fixed, which is all part and parcel of this conversation. What does it mean when something isn't fair? What do you do when something isn't fair? Do you have to accept that life isn't fair and just like let everybody rumble over you? Or are there solutions? Like, what is the solution? So I think that's what we're going to get to dig into because there's lots of ways to look at this. There's lots of ways to think about this. There's a lot of ways to feel about this. And I never think there's just one way through. So we're going to talk about the different parts, the different strategies, the different ways to internalize all of this.
Where do you think the idea, like, where did you get your sense of fairness? You think it's taught to us by our parents? You think it's taught to us by school or the media? What do you think?
Probably all of the above, right? Again, just like all kinds of things, what we're taught in the words and then what we see in action are not always the same, right? So, like, everything needs to be fair. There's law, there's judges, there's rules. And so we talk about it. And I think this is probably one of the ways that we get all messed up about it is we talk about it as in everything should be fair. Everything has a way of being. Everything has rules and rights and wrongs. And then because in life that actually isn't true, right? Like there's so many gray areas, there's so much wiggle room on all of the sides that what we were told doesn't play out in real life. And so it feels like we're making a mistake. It feels like something isn't working when really it was never meant to be that black and white.
Ooh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think morals, we're taught morals, right? The difference between right and wrong. And I was raised Catholic, so that was drilled into me. This idea, I mean, like, look what Eve did with the apple. Well, she broke that rule. Well, obviously, they should be cast out of the Garden of Eden and suffer, right? And that sort of permeates a lot of my thoughts around fairness. So, again, I want to say that privilege is a real thing. and that there are people born into or find themselves in situations that are unjust. Like they don't get the same starting point as someone else. Like I have very, very fair skin and I do not have to deal with racism, for example. And if somebody has to deal with racism, that is truly unjust. That's not fair. And the fact that they can't have the same opportunities sometimes or not have them as easily as I can because of the color of their skin is not right. But I think what I want to talk about more than that, because we have to keep fighting for equity. I truly believe that. What I want to talk about more is like when things happen to us personally, like a job loss or an illness or a breakup or, just something that happens to us that maybe isn't happening to other people around us and maybe is nothing to do with any decisions that we have made, any choices, any actions. That can feel hugely unfair. And I want to explore how to deal with that.
Yeah, so first, again, I think you and I are very much on the same page when it comes to privilege and understanding that there are things that should be improved in this world. But when it comes to what we have control over and how we can navigate certain conversations, I think it is a really big, important conversation. And knowing that what feels unfair to us probably doesn't feel unfair to somebody else is also important, right? Like what feels fair and unfair might not be that black and white thing. So being able to think through what we're feeling, what other people are feeling, what the stories we're telling are around it, and how to navigate that is part of this.
I would love to know, like, can you think off the top of your head of an example of something that maybe might feel unfair to me, but feels perfectly fine for you? Not us specifically, obviously, but like, what do you have an idea of like what that might feel like? I do. I have one that I can share. And that is, I have somebody who talked to me recently about his job loss. And he said, I lost my job. And I've lost my job before, and I felt that was very unfair, and he lost his job and he was like, well, that's just the way business is sometimes and people downsize. And honestly, I wasn't very happy there anyway, and so it just created an opportunity for me, and he sort of went on about that, right? But I was like, wow, you didn't have even a moment of being angry. And he's like, no, I was more like relieved than anything. So that, I think, it just depends on how you look at things sometimes, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really interesting one because part of the reaction to the same situation was based on how you felt going into it, right? So if you're like, I didn't really like this job anyway, what a relief that I don't have to quit. I don't have to tell people that I quit a perfectly good job with nothing lined up after because it wasn't my fault because they downsized me, right? Like it becomes this freedom giving situation. Whereas to somebody else who wanted to stay in that job, it does not feel like that at all. And is that a fair or unfair thing? Or is it just a how you react to a thing that happened to you? And, is it fair if you were downsized because honestly, the company was in a lot of financial trouble and they truly needed to downsize? Or if they downsized you, just downsized, quote unquote, as an excuse to get rid of somebody that they just didn't want around anymore. And you know that, right? Like there are differences other than just straight they downsized that would help make you feel fair or unfair. But I also think a lot of people tend to lean one way or the other. Like when things happen, it's unfair, or when things happen, I guess we figure out what comes next, right? Like there are different ways that people tend to feel and think in a common way. Does that make sense?
Oh, it makes total sense. I mean, I know I started this by saying that when I feel something's unfair, I can stew in it for days. And that is still true to some extent. I can have these situations where I'm like, oh, it's not fair, it's not right, and I'm really angry about it. And I can stay there for a while. That resentment can build. And that's something that I am working on as a human being. But there also have been plenty of times in my life where I have had something unfair, or what I might feel is unfair, happen to me. And I recognize fairly quickly that this is something that has pushed me out of my comfort zone. That's why I'm upset about it. And that it can be, if I leverage it properly, an opportunity for personal growth. And that includes the illnesses that I have because I live with some chronic illnesses. I know that chronic illnesses suck, honestly. It's not fun to have them. If I could wave a magic wand, I certainly would get rid of them. It's not like I want to keep them around, but I have them. So now that I have them and there's nothing I can do about it, and yeah, it's not fair that I have them, I also can look at it as what can I learn from this? What can I learn about myself? How can I challenge myself? How can I take steps to make my life better while living with this illness? And I think that is how I manage a lot of those things that happened to me that frankly would have knocked me down a few years ago and I would not have known how to get back up. Well, it sounds like a Chumbawamba song, but here we are. Gen X humor, everybody.
There you go. And as you were talking, the thing I was thinking about too, that I feel most often that I get stuck in it not being fair is also health, right? Like illnesses. It's like, it's not fair that I have been dealt the hand that I've been dealt. It's not fair that some of my family members have been dealt the hand that they've been dealt. Like, it's not fair. But also, like, that's not a thing anybody can change. Like, it isn't fair, but also nobody specifically did this to us. Like, it's not a person who was like, you know what? And that they can change it. And so, based on what's true, even if it sucks, what do I want to feel? Do I want to be angry about it? Or do I want to figure out what to do in this case so that I don't feel angry about it?
Yeah, at the end of the day, do I want to harm myself further living with anger, living unhappily? And the answer to me is no. No, I want to move through those feelings. I want to acknowledge those feelings. And I think no matter how much work we do on ourselves, there's not a second where I would say to people, oh, yeah, immediately when something happens to me that is awful, I go, oh, this is a great growth opportunity. No, no, that comes after my very, very human feelings, my very immediate reaction of, no, this isn't right. I'm so upset that this is happening. Then, after that, once I allow those feelings, I will sometimes just consciously say to myself, let the feeling move through you. Don't hold it back. Don't try to talk yourself out of it. Literally let it go through your body and out of your body, because if I don't do that, it gets stuck in my body. And again, with chronic illness, that's not something that's good because stress can exacerbate a lot of that, right? So I have to let those feelings out and then I can pick up the pieces after everything and start working through things again.
I think we talked about this in our episode about unexpected change because I know somebody mentioned this whole it's okay to feel the feelings came up then too. And I think that that is huge, that letting yourself feel the feelings, that it's okay to be upset, that it's okay to be sad, that you don't need to pretend you're fine all of the time is hugely a part of this. Let yourself have emotions. The more you let yourself have the emotions and let them be okay and let yourself sort of resolve them, the less you're going to have that stewing mentality, right? Like, I'm not saying, okay, feel the feelings and keep them in yourself forever. You deserve to get to do that. Let yourself feel them. And then I believe mindset, beliefs are hugely important. And if we understand that, so much can be easier for us because mindset and how we step through what our life is. If we have a bad mindset, it's harder. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, all things being exactly the same, if we can figure out what we have control over and take action based on what we have control over, we can make a situation better without somebody else having to realize they were wrong, without somebody else having to apologize, right? Without somebody else, whoever it is, having to do anything. There are some things that just based on how we feel and think about things can make our lives easier.
Yeah. One of the things I had to learn and really acknowledge, and it's not a nice thing, but life isn't fair. And I'm not saying that like my grandpa would say it, right? Well, just suck it up because life isn't fair. But truly, truly, really, life isn't fair. The first mindset shift for me is acknowledging that life isn't fair and not to expect it to be fair. I can still fight for equity. I can still fight for people's rights. I can still fight to get what I feel I deserve in life for sure. But as a general rule, if you just watch a nature documentary and you will see it clear as day, life is not set up to be fair. It is set up to be challenging for whatever reason, whether you call that divinity or whether it's just the universe created this chaotic planet that we live on. Life is about struggle in part. It's also about joy and happiness and all those things. But those things we tend to create ourselves. A lot of life is things that happen to us. And a lot of what kind of joy and happiness and connection and peace that we find is how we choose to deal with those things.
Yeah. I think that one of the biggest differences can also be if you think life is happening to you. I think I might have said this in a different podcast too. Is life happening to you or are you happening to life? And so you don't have control if it's happening to you. And you have more control if you're like, I am happening to it. So just that small difference of not feeling like you have any ability to control a situation to thinking you do have ability, even if it's just to be like, I'm not gonna let this ruin my day, or I'm not gonna let it ruin my year, right? Like it's okay if it ruined my day, but we're not gonna let it ruin everything else moving forward. And deciding what you want to do about that. Okay, so here's a silly example, but it is one of the ones I feel like happens in our house about what's not fair. So let's say I bought a pack of 6 butter tarts.
I love butter tarts. So go on.
And there's 5 people in my family, but one person doesn't like butter tarts. So that's okay. So now there's 6 butter tarts and 4 people. Who gets a second one?
Well, that's the no, you send them to me. Obviously, you send me the extras. But if you
Obviously.
can't do that, who does get the extra?
And so we have a tendency to have things like, okay, so within a certain time frame, if you want another one, ask, we'll split it. If you were one of the 4 people and by day 3 you didn't even eat your first one, I think you're out,
Yeah,
right?
that's
Like,
the role we had in our big family too. Is growing up, it was like that, and with my own family of 6, it was like that. Same thing.
right. But the feeling is it's not fair that I didn't get mine. I was like, well, it's not fair that you left it on the counter taunting us.
Right. Agreed.
And so, what is the solution? The solution could be that if you know you really want it, that you're going to take it out of the box, you're going to put it in a container, you put your name on it, and you're going to say, this one's mine. I have set it aside. It's for me. I don't want to eat it right now, but I know I want it. If you just assume that we're going to sit there and look at it for days and days and days without finally giving into the temptation of eating it because you don't seem to want it, I think that's on you.
First of all, I don't understand anyone who can look at a butter tart for 3 days and not eat it, but, you do
Fair enough.
you, I guess. Yeah. But, yeah, I mean, it's true, right? Like, it's about taking that action. No matter what, you have to take some action. And it's also really about knowing what you can control and what you can't control. So, I might not be able to control that I, am sick with something, but I can control what I do about that. Do I follow my doctor's advice? Yes or no? Do I take supplements? Yes or no? Do I find moments of happiness and joy and actually seek those out whenever I feel I need to? Yes or no? Do I find ways to live in ways, that suit me where I'm at today? Yes or no? Those are all things that I have control over, and they make the situation feel less unjust, right? It makes me feel like I am still living with the situation that I have been presented with, the things that I can't control.
Yeah. And if you believe that some of the things are happening to you, we're going to go back to the butter tarts for a minute. But if you believe that the fact that somebody ate the butter tart that was supposed to be yours was really disrespectful and really rude and
Mm,
unkind,
I mean, it is, but go on.
then you're going to be like angry and full of like, why are you like this? And if instead you think they really wanted it and they figured I didn't. And both of those scenarios could happen, right? With nothing being different. The person who didn't get a butter tart could feel really angry and resentful and feel like other people were being unfair to them. Or they could be like, oh, I guess I didn't get one. Maybe next time I'm going to say, you know what? Last time I didn't get any, I'm going to get an extra one. Whether or not that works out in the battle of the butter tarts is another conversation. But like that's a thing you could say in response.
Exactly. You're bringing up a really sensitive topic for me.
The butter tarts, I know, I'm sorry.
I mean, that would be a situation that challenged me. There's this place about an hour. I'm going off on a journey now. There's this place about an hour from Toronto East called Doodoo's Bakery. Shout out Doodoo's Bakery. It's in the middle of nowhere, and you pull up, and they have truly the best butter tarts I've ever had. But you don't even have to take my word for it because there is literally a wall of awards, like medals, medal after medal after pin after trophy. I mean, it's so impressive because their butter tarts are freaking amazing. They're so good. If somebody ate my butter tart because I didn't eat it for a day or two, my doo-doo's butter tart, there would be war in my house. There would be war because I'd be like, no, you should all know that I love butter tarts. And how dare you not check in with me? They're just some things you can't control, my friend, and that might be one of them.
Yeah. Again, I wanna be like, "Did you buy the butter tarts?" If you bought the butter tarts, then people should understand that they are mostly your butter tarts.
This is actually an episode on butter tarts. It's not.
It's an episode on butter tarts.
It's actually just about butter. Oh, what is a butter tart for people who are not Canadian? Okay, think pecan pie or sugar pie or something along those lines. Butter tarts, they're a Canadian staple. They're very sweet. They're made with like maple syrup and butter, and they have a nice little crust and they're delicious. Yeah, definitely look them up. They're yummy, yummy, yummy. And sometimes they have things like pecans and sometimes they have raisins. And there's a lot of debate about that, but that is a whole different episode.
Yeah, because it isn't actually an episode about butter tarts. It's just a really you know what I liked about the butter tart example is it really isn't super consequential, right? So if we think about life and fairness okay, I'm sorry, Rowan's face for those who can't see it disagrees that butter tarts are not that consequential.
Very consequential.
But it's not like a high stakes situation, right? Like losing a job. But we still can get really upset about it. And when we talk through like the littler things and what it means to us and how we feel about it and why we feel that way, because some of it, when it's not fair, takes on that's with the whole stories we tell. The meaning now is you don't respect me. You think you're more important than me, or you don't even think about me. And so that is a really big meaning you're putting on you ate my butter tart.
Yep.
And sometimes you can think about it with these small examples because when you think about the big examples, the feelings, imagine, right? If you feel that way about somebody eating your butter tart, if you're talking about something way more consequential in your life, it's going to be even more filled with emotions and harder to sort of see the other side.
Well, we kind of, I had a roommate at one point who wouldn't do the dishes. Not always, sometimes they would do the dishes, but most of the time I would be doing the dishes. And it was very easy for a while for me to look at that as this person doesn't care. This person just doesn't care if it's messy. This person doesn't respect me. I have made it clear that this is really important to me, that I can't be doing this all the time, that we have to share that, and I kind of went on about, and I created this whole story in my head about how this person, I think towards the end of it, it was like they get up, they throw their dishes on the counter, and they kind of go, who gives a crap? And like they just like, and it's like because they just don't care at all. But I don't want to speak too much for this person, but like they had other things going on. There were a lot of other things going on, mental health things, and neurodivergence and things that sort of made it so that they were not looking at chores in the house in the same way that I was. It had nothing to do with how they saw me, how much they respected me or didn't, how much they cared about our home or didn't. It had everything to do with where they were in life. And was it fair that I had to clean up more than they did? No, it wasn't fair. In a very fair situation, we'd be doing half and half. But it wasn't because they were trying to get away with something. And they were carrying a very big load in their own life. And it was, honestly, once I realized that, so much easier just go, oh, you know what? They're not able to get to it today. I'll do it. I think it can be very easy when things don't feel fair to fall into a victim mentality.
Mhm.
when we tell ourselves all the stories, all the things you were saying, all the things I was just saying, that's a victim mentality, right? To stay stuck in it is a victim mentality. And approaching life from that standpoint, from a lot of experience, is one of the worst things you can do because it doesn't make anything more fair. It just makes you feel a whole lot worse.
And I agree with everything, right down to, you know, somebody not even realizing they're doing something, but knowing that somebody might receive it as a very intentional slight, right? So I told you that it's important for me to do the dishes. And if you don't do them, it feels disrespectful. And the other person being like, I didn't do the dishes, right?
Right.
Like as clear as, oh. So one of the things I remember, I was very lucky. I had a roommate for a couple of years and we didn't have a lot of conflict. But I remember one day she was like, why do you leave all of the cabinet doors open all the time? And I was like, I do, right? Like it wasn't like intentionally being like, how about I make this kitchen look silly with all of the cabinet doors open so you can see inside and them just being in the way? It's like for me, I opened it, I took the thing, and then like I was done, and no part of me remembered to close it. And I know that other people feel this way, and it's so funny now. Every time I walk into my kitchen and every single cabinet door is open, because I know it was probably multiple of my family members came into multiple cabinets, and none of them remembered to close the cabinet doors. And it's such a big thing that I know happens in my family that when we had our big renovation, I said, are there self-closing cabinets? And she said, no. I'm very disappointed.
And you know what? My partner does that too. I always know when she's been in the kitchen because there is at least one cabinet or one drawer that is left open. And I also go around the house and turn off lights after she's been in a room. The other day, I asked her to turn off the light in the bathroom. Our bathroom has multiple lights. There's like a light for around the vanity, there's a light above the bathtub, and there's a light in the shower. And she said, "No problem, I'll turn off the lights when I'm done." So I left afterwards and I went downstairs and said, "I'm very proud of you. You turned off the lights. The vanity lights, you did, however, leave on the light above the bathtub, the light in the shower. That's okay because you thought to yourself, I don't want Rowan to have to run around and turn off all the lights. You forgot a couple, but I really appreciate that you did that. I could have turned around and been like, you left the lights on again. Like it's such a small thing in the grand scheme of things, but it's just an example of like, I saw that and I went, she really did try, like she really did try. And I appreciate that she made the effort, even if I had to still go and turn off the lights after.
Because I think a lot of the time, probably not all of the time, but a lot of the time, the thing that doesn't feel fair is also about feeling disrespectful, right? Like that person doesn't respect me enough to do this thing. And if that's not actually the case, right? Like it lets you take some of the gasoline out of the fire when you think, okay, yeah, this isn't fair, but what can we do? And the other is the what can we do, right? I mean, the perfect solution would have been those self-closing cupboards that I said I wanted, right? Like, what can we
Yes.
do? Like, have them all close themselves, right? Like, every 20 minutes, if they're still open, like, close them. Fantastic. It could be that, splitting chores in a way where it's, you know what, I'll do all the dishes, but can you do all the garbage? And in that situation, maybe the other person doesn't mind doing the garbage. It's easy for them to do it. You don't mind doing the dishes. They hate doing it. Like, what is the solution that you can find where it doesn't have to be, that image, you probably have seen it, where the imagery is like a fence and you're looking over it, let's say at a baseball game, and everybody has a like 1 foot step stool to look over the fence. But one of you is 5 feet tall, one of you is 6 feet tall, and one of you is 7 feet tall, very tall people.
That's Bigfoot at that point, by the way.
But there are 7 feet tall people, foot
I
tall people.
suppose it's
Anyway,
true, but
but standing on the step stool is not going to do the same thing if the fence is 6.5 feet tall and you stood on a 1 foot step stool
right.
and you're 5 foot tall. So it's not all about just doing what's equal, and what's fair isn't always just what's equal.
That's right. That's right.
And so when you think about it and when you think like, how do I adjust for a person? If I feel like it's not fair that something is happening, can we adjust it so that it works for both of us? Most of the time, people aren't trying to be shitty to you. Like, I know sometimes they are, but most of the time, it's not intentionally shitty. It's, well, this is what works for me.
That's right. A lot of the feelings that come about when it comes to fairness have to do with the story we're telling ourselves. So what can really help me on top of, before I'm able to calm down enough to come up with solutions, and you have some very good solutions there. What helps me is asking myself, what do I know is true about the situation and what am I making up? Right? So what I know is true, for example, in the case of the roommate is the dishes are not being done equally. I am doing most of the dishes. Everything else is something that I'm telling myself. It is a story. Now, I could also say, and my roommate is home a lot more than I am, and still the dishes are not being done. That part might also be true. I have also talked to my roommate, and things have not gotten better. Also true. But any feelings, any assumptions that I'm making about why the dishes aren't being done, that's all made up. Or how that reflects upon me and how this person sees me, also made up, right? So I have to remove all of the emotion and just look at the facts. And if I look at the facts, it takes the edge off. And then I can start finding out why. Now, why isn't this happening? Why not what I've made up in my head? I'm not going to go to the person and go, and you just don't care enough to do this, right? Because I don't know that. I'll use another example. So, as a bigger person, and we talked about this on our fatness episode, but as a larger person, I was taught for a long time by society, by medical professionals, pretty much that anything that happens that is bad in my body is because I'm a bigger person.
Hmm.
So, I broke out in a rash recently, this like really awful rash all over my arms. And my first thought was, it's because I'm not taking care of myself,
Mm.
right? That's not helpful. Like, that's not going to help me, right? So I have to be able to step back and go, no, what's actually going on? All I know is I broke out in this rash. Is it because of something I'm doing? I don't know. Is it because of something I'm not doing? I don't know. And it turned out it was an infection that really had nothing to do with me. But for like 3 or 4 days, I had convinced myself this was somehow my fault and I had to fix it. And finally, my partner was like, can you just go to the doctor and stop being a stubborn man? Like, just go to the doctor. And the doctor's like, here's some antibiotics. And then it went away. Right. But that's the story. The stories are so powerful. And that's an example of how I suffered for another several days because I assumed it was me and I could somehow fix the problem by treating my body better. So when we're talking about how to look at a situation, whether it is fairness or anything else, it's really important to take the story element out.
Yeah, the story is huge. And let's say what you think is happening is even true. We're going to talk about dishes some more. Podcast
Fun.
episode about butter tart and dishes. And I once was talking to somebody who really wanted their partner to do more of the dishes. And she said when they do the dishes, they like clank around and they seem really hostile. And so then I end up taking back over. And I was like, well, what if you just decide that they really like doing dishes aggressively and leave them alone to do it how they want? The responsibility of them doing the dishes and being happy about it, right? Like, right, versus doing the dishes because you asked them to, right? Like, that's two different asks. And they don't have to enjoy it for it to be fair that they did it.
Yeah. That's the other thing. Like, don't make other people's emotions your responsibility. Obviously, we don't want to hurt anybody, right? Like, I don't want to go out of my way to make someone feel bad, but people don't have to like the work that they do around the house either. I don't exactly like the work I do around the house, but I do it. So I think that's a really good point. You're just smart, except for the butter tart thing, because I disagree with you there that that's a very serious injustice when somebody does eat the butter tarts that are supposed to be yours. But I digress. Fairness, life is not fair. But I think if I've taken anything out of this episode, it's to remind myself when I feel that things are unfair, to take a step back and take my own advice and yours and really pay attention to the story I'm telling myself around the perceived injustice and also feel my feelings and then do what I can about it.
Yeah, I think that's great. This has been a good conversation. I would like to invite people to come into the comments on our Substack and tell us if you have anything to add to it. Something that I have very much enjoyed since we launched the podcast is all the people who come to me and tell me, I was listening to this episode and I was thinking this, and I have this thought, and I had this counterpoint. And so I love that the podcast is getting people thinking, and I want to keep hearing from more people what it is that it's getting them thinking, because I think that will be fodder for more episodes and follow up episodes.
Absolutely. I would love to do an episode where we get people's thoughts on other episodes, their ideas, their takes on things, and talk about those.
Yeah.
Because we don't know everything. We're just two people.
Lots of thoughts.
We have lots of thoughts. You have even more thoughts. So please do share them with us. And thank you for joining us on this episode. Thank you for listening to Unboxing It. We're so glad you did. If you like what you heard and you want to help us keep making episodes, please leave us a rating wherever you heard this one. You can also subscribe to the Unboxing It Substack to get access to all of the latest news and some special bonus content. And hey, truly, don't forget to find some moments of joy today. You deserve them. Take care out there, and we'll see you next time.